Information Technology and Evolution. Introduction. Evaluation of information system performance means evaluation of performance in hardware, software, computer networks, data, and human resources. The main objective of information system functionality performances evaluation is upgrading and especially improvement in quality of maintenance. Technology or IT refers to a spectrum of technologies including software, hardware, communications technologies, and related services used to create, process, store, secure, and exchange data. Modern IT is the result of nearly 6 decades of consistent and impactful innovation. How evolution information technology evolves over the years. Current digital systems such as computers, smartphones, tablets, and laptops have evolved over time. The typewriter was replaced by digital systems such as a computer and word processing software. Telephones have evolved over time into versions that are portable, such as mobile phones and more recently smartphones. Information evolution is based on two underlying ideas, namely information connection and adaptation to the environment. The idea that information is connected surfaces in many different fields. The World Wide Web is a very large scale example. What is information evolution and communication technology? Information evolution could be defined as a process of changing from simple techniques of data and information processing to complex and advanced methods through inventions and innovations. How information technology changed the world? Modern technology has paved the way for multi-functional devices like the smartwatch and the smartphone. Computers are increasingly faster, more portable, and higher powered than ever before. With all these revolutions, technology has also made our lives easier, faster, better, and more fun. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I am Eric Rice S. Mabala, and today we will discuss the development of language. Man is distinguished from the animal world in no more striking way than in his ability to communicate by means of language. All human activity except the simplest and most primitive requires cooperation, and that is not possible without language. Animals do, of course, communicate by sound, but their cries are inarticulate and general, whereas it is of the essence of human language that the sound uttered are articulate. That is, they have a structure that can be divided into words having precise and specific meanings. Language is a system of vocal sound that are symbolic, that is, they are arbitrarily related to the thing they stand for. Animal gestures and cries, on the other hand, are non-symbolic. An animal seeks to prevent the approach of another by frightening sound and gestures, even brute force. While man, although not always forswearing these methods, uses sounds to symbolize his intention. Keep out. By writing, he has a means of communicating his intention without the necessity of his continued presence. From such basic needs, language has been developed into a highly sophisticated instrument for the expression of the most complex thoughts and the most subtle and uplifting aesthetic emotions. The origin of language lie hidden in the remote past and are a matter of plausible speculation. The language of present-day primitive peoples offers few clues, since their spoken word is still relatively sophisticated compared with man's earliest attempts at speech. Studying the way babies learn to speak is also hardly relevant because their speech is derived from adults who have already learned a highly developed language. It is most likely that human language had its beginning around a million years ago, at about the same time as the earliest tool-making and distinctively human forms of cooperation. Several theories have been proposed to explain how language arose, some with such curious names as the Bow Wow, the Pooh Pooh, and Yu He Hu theories. The first suggests that primitive language imitated the sounds of nature, particularly animal cries. The second that it arose from the distinctive emotional cries of pain or joy. As the sound thus emitted are inarticulate, neither explains how man arrived at articulate sound. The Yo-he-ho is better in this respect, proposed by Noiri in the 19th century. It suggests that language arose from involuntary sound uttered by men engaged in some joint muscular effort, as having a tree trunk. While having, they trap the breath in the lungs, closing the vocal cords, and on relaxing the cords, open the air was expelled in a grunt or some other sound. This would have given rise to the basis consonant vowel structure of language and has the additional advantage of associating the origin of language with human cooperative activity. The need to communicate during such activity is most likely to have provided the motivation to derive and develop the method of communication. But whether there was a single point of origin or development as scattered time and places, and what forms primitive language took must remain visually guesswork until we reach the era of written records. And that's all. Thank you.
Hello everyone. By the way, my name is Chrislyn Joyce C. Madronero from Group 3, hashtag We're Love. So for our topic for today is all about the origins of writing before the written word. For thousands of years, long before this invention of the true written word, people used symbols to keep essential records. The earliest form of note taking known in the Middle East, the tally bone, dates back at least 30,000 years. The bones recorded lunar months, which govern the ritual cycles observed by hunter gatherers from 9000 to 3000 BC. People in the Middle East used clay tokens to record commercial transactions, selling them into clay envelopes called bullae. A token's shape symbolize either goods, animals, grain, or specific large numbers. At around the same time, the sale, a detail engraved image which identified the sender of the message, was developed. The sale was pressed on wet clay by stamping or ruling in the case of cylinder sales. The Rosetta Stone. Hieroglyphs were deciphered in 1822 to 24 by French Egyptologist and linguist Jean-François Champollion. He used the Rosetta Stone, a stele of Ptolemy V, bearing the same encryption in three scripts: hieroglyph, hieroglyphic Egyptian, top, Demotic Egyptian, middle, and Greek, bottom. He disap- he disap- he deciphered the Egyptian scripts by comparing identifiable words such as names in all three scripts, allowing him to work out the sound of each Egyptian sign from the Greek. What is cuneiform? A writing technique widely used in the Middle East. between 2500 to 3330 BC, scribes used symbols built from wedge-shaped impressions pressed into clay or carved into stone. Many languages and civilizations use cuneiform from Sumerian to Persian. Cuneiform stylus. Cuneiform signs were formed by pressing a stylus on wheat clay, each time producing a wedge shape. Cuneiform means wedge shape in Latin. And this is the example of Egyptian hieroglyphs. Formal writing in Egypt retained the use of pictorial symbols, hieroglyphs, for more than 3,000 years. This example differs little in style from the earliest surviving inscriptions made in 3200 BC. Egyptian scribes. Number 1, spread of the written word. Cultures in the 3rd and 2nd millennia BC were not really literate societies. Once writing became abstract rather than pictorial, only a small number of merchants, administrators, and elites would have had enough schooling to read and write. It is thought that only 1% of Egyptians were literate. Ancient rulers used writing to manage the information on which their states ran, not to disseminate it. Royal political inscriptions might be combined with imagery, and it seems that the masses would have read only the images, while their writing was aimed at fellow elites as at posterity. Assyrian kings, for instance, buried inscriptions in the foundations of temples, recording their exploits so that future kings rebuilding those temples would read them. The development of alphabets. From alphabets to printing. Gradually, writing system became simpler and more sophisticated, but the spread of written communication was slow until the invention of printing during the European Renaissance. At first, written symbols represented a variety of words, syllables, ideas, or sounds. The concept that every symbol should denote a sound was an innovation in the Middle East and led to the alphabet. The first alphabetic writing with each sign representing a consonant but with no vowels appeared in the 2nd millennium BC using adapted Egyptian hieroglyphs. The people of Ugarit in Syria developed a cuneiform alphabet, but the need for clay prevented its spread. Alphabets became important in 1000 to 700 BC, being used for Hebrew, Aramaic, Aramaic, and Phoenician writing. The Phoenicians used separate signs for vowels, influencing both Greek and Latin writing.
Printing, Module 2. The origin of printing starts as early as 200 AD. In 1440s, goldsmith and inventor Johannes Gutenberg was a political exile from Mainz, Germany, when he began experimenting with a printing in Strasbourg in France. In 1440s, he returned to Mainz several years later, and by 1450s had a printing machine perfected and ready to use commercially, the Gutenberg press. All kinds of printing in old and modern era since 200 AD until 1991. First is woodblock printing 200 AD. Woodblock printing is vintage printing. At its best, it's credited as the earliest form of printing and was first developed in China around 200 AD. Then, number 2, the movable type in 1041. Created by Beijing and Song Dynasty in China. Movable type is similar to woodcut, although this particular technique was used specifically for printing script. Number 3. The first ever printing press. 1440s. Johann Gutenberg is perhaps the most important person to feature in the evolution of printing. He was responsible for invention of printing press, an innovative method that built on techniques such as movable type but consolidated them into one device that could be operated by hand. Number 4. Iconic print moment. The Gutenberg Bible in 1455. The very first book to be mass produced was the Gutenberg Bible in 1945. The method used to do so was movable type and around 180 copies were printed. This may seem small in comparison to today's standards, but considering there were only around 30,000 books in the whole of Europe, it was fair old run. Number 5. Etching in 1550s. Etching was used in Middle Ages to decorate metal arms and armor, and later down the line it was applied to printmaking by the German craftsman by Daniel Hopfer. Number 6. Lithography in 1790s. The next evolution of printing media, lithography is a technique which is still commonly used today. It revolves around the relationship between oil and water, which repel each other. Number 7. The rotary press in 1843. Invented by Richard March Howe. The rotary press was the natural successor of printing press. It worked by using cylinders which the images to be printed were curved around. This was a lot faster than the first ever printing press and allowed for paper to be continuously feed through the press. Number 8. Offset printing in 1875. Although it was developed almost 150 years ago, offset printing remains almost unchanged today and it's the most popular way of printing large runs. It works by transferring the ink from a plate to a rubber blanket and then to the printing surface. Number 9. Screen printing in 1912. I mean 19 Screen printing was invented in China during the Song dynasty between 960 until 1279 AD, but it didn't take off in Europe until the early 1990s, when silk stock became more widely available. Inkjet printing in 1951. Thanks to inkjet printing, direct contact with paper is no longer required. Ink can now be applied by spraying it through jet's fan. Then the laser printing in 1969. Once jets came into play, the printing field was wide and open. In the laser
Hi everyone, my name is Rhea R. Montesclaros from Expert 5. My topic is facsimile and television. While the practice of transmitting pictures over the air is relatively recent, The basic principles behind facsimile and television can be observed in nature and have been used by man in his art for thousands of years. This is the mosaic principle. A multiple of similar tiny elements composes a single meaningful whole. A mosaic design is another example of optical illusion. The eye is tricked into seeing the whole when it cannot distinguish individual elements. In today's communications terminology, digital elements are used to represent an apparently continuous pattern. Facsimile. A facsimile, more commonly referred to as a fax, is the transmission of a document or image from one place to another electronically. The document to be sent is scanned and sent over a telephone or internet connection. A combined scanner and transmitter is usually known as a fax machine. Modern day internet connections have greatly reduced the use of fax machines. A facsimile is also known as a telefax or telecopy. Facsimile seems to have had a slow but steady evolution from that time. But during the early part of the 20th century, the major uses was in transmitting photographs for newspaper publication, a process called wire photo. It was invented in 1843 by Alexander Bain. The electric printing telegraph was the world's first faxing device since then. Faxing has transformed many times and is still widely used today. Television. Television, it was not long after the invention of the telephone in 1876 that imaginative writers and artists were dreaming of the next step, which they called by such name as telephonoscope or electric vision. In 1932, Zworykin, now at RCA, supervised the installation of television equipment in their flagship NBC studio in Empire State Building. And in 1935, RCA President David Sarnoff announced that they would spend $1 million for TV program demonstrations. Also in 1935, a station in Berlin began low-definition broadcasting, and in 1936, the BBC began the world's first high-definition TV broadcasting service. In 1937, a mobile TV unit roved the streets of New York City for live pickups. The pre-war development of television technology culminated in the concept of the shadow mask color tube in 1938 by W. Fletch Sign in Germany, and the invention of the first large-screen television projector, Iridophore, by Professor Fischer at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in 1938. In addition to basic signals consisting of speech, music, or telegraph codes, a telecommunication system is often required to transmit signals of a visual nature. Facsimile means an exact reproduction, in, and in facsimile transmission, an exact reproduction of a document or picture is provided at the receiving end. Television means visually at a distance, and a television system is used to reproduce any scene at the receiving end. It differs from facsimile in that the scene may be live. Example include movement. Information is transmitted at a much faster rate in television transmission than it is in facsimile transmission. As a result, television transmission requires a much larger bandwidth and special wideband circuits. We are learning Group 6. Rhea R. Montesclaros, Mary Chris Mabala, Rodwin Maraon, Kerslin Joy Madronero, and Feljun Mabala. Thank you.